Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whenever and wherever you're watching us. Welcome to another episode of Conical Supremacy. And man, do we have a great show for you today. I'm really looking forward to this, aren't you, Doug?
Yeah,
I just can't wait for this. So let's get a tune going right now with our guest, the one and only Mr. Bill Reichenbach. Take it away, Q. So that's the great Mr. Bill Reichenbach playing bass trumpet there. And thanks so much for being here today, Bill. We really appreciate it. Um, wow, man. I mean, can we talk about the career a little bit? Is that cool with you?
Sure.
Yeah, Doug, go for it, please, my friend.
So I know some of these answers, but I'm going to ask them again. So, so you grew up where?
Tacoma Park, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C.
Wow. And when did you start playing trombone?
When I was 11, which was about 18. No, well,
So, and then who were your big influences as a young trombone player?
well, my teachers were a pretty big influence on me, especially Bob Isley when I started studying with him, like just in terms of how the trombone was supposed to sound. Uh, my father was actually a big influence on me, not as a trombone player, but as a musician, because he was a drummer. And he talked about music a lot from the time I was old enough to remember him talking about it, about playing with good time and playing in tune and all that stuff. I didn't even know what he was talking about, but it was.
So Bill, was he like, did he work all the time, man? Or was that his gig, or did he do something else
No,
on top of it?
he was a drummer. That's what he did. He worked all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, did he explain to you his concept of rhythm? I mean, did you learn that from him or on the job?
Well, I mean, I don't think he explained. He didn't explain it technically. He just talked about things being on like lined up in terms of like he would play rhythms on the. We'd be in the car and he'd play rhythms on the steering wheel and stuff like that. Like we'd be listening to a something on the radio and he would be, he'd play something along with it. Or we would watch recordings of Toscanini and the
Huh.
symphony, and he would say, "Now watch the way his downbeat happens. His downbeat is exact with the downbeat of the orchestra, as opposed to the orchestra is not playing delayed like a lot of them do." And that was something that he always was bugged about. So his whole idea was to have everything like right there, like we would say on the click.
Mhm.
You know,
Wow. That's pretty advanced for and I know George Roberts was one of your influences too.
yeah, yeah. Well, George is one of the first bass trombone players I ever heard. Um, the first stereo record my father ever bought when he bought this GE stereo that looked kind of like a suitcase, and then you'd open the speakers out from the side and the
Man, yeah.
it would flip down. It sounded a little bit better than a suitcase, but it looked like a suitcase. And he bought this Pete Rugolo album, 10 trombones, like two pianos. And it was a very early stereo, almost like a stereo demonstration record, really, because it was like they were utilizing this brand new stereo. So they had four tenor trombones and one bass trombone on one side and the same on the other side. And they had two pianos. They were split, and they had one drummer and one bass player in the middle. Uh, John Williams was one of the piano players on quite a bit of that album. So George was on one side, and Kenny Schroyer was on one side, or Russ Brown was on one side. There was just like nowadays, the same guys couldn't make every date. But the liner notes would tell you exactly who was playing what. they'd say, now on this side where Frank Rossellino is playing a solo, you hear the bass trombone. That's George Roberts on that side, or on this side. I mean, I have a new copy of it that I bought, and I'm keeping it just for the liner notes because I have a digital copy of the record. But and also that Frank Rossellino, that was where I first heard Frank Rossellino play. So there was so much influence about the way my life went just from that record.
So
Rosalino was an amazing artist. I mean, truly. I mean, the guy could do anything on the trombone, and I mean, it was just a wonderful thing. I got into Rosalino when I was in my 20s, and I'll tell you what, I wish I could play half the stuff that he can play. I mean, it's just truly amazing.
Yeah, I mean, my goal as a jazz player has always been to at least be like a bad Frank Rossellino.
Well, speaking of that, do you mind if we throw up another tune and show your trombone playing, man? Is that cool?
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Let's throw that up, Q.
Just beautiful playing. Amazing.
Thanks.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about your career. Now, you started working, was this even before you went to college or while you were in college?
I did. I started working a little before college. Yeah.
And what was your first job? I kind of love this story.
Now I'm wondering if you're remembering one that I'm not thinking of.
Well, was it one of your very first jobs, the opening of the Kennedy Center?
Oh,
the world premiere.
That was while I was in school. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. At Eastman. Yeah. Well, it was, it was like a Washington D.C. job, and I was living in Washington D.C. when I wasn't up in Rochester, and so I came back for one of those, periodic vacations, whatever it was. I don't remember, but the guy that was contracting for the Bernstein Mass, which was going to open the Kennedy Center, they were just, they had just finished building it, and so he calls up, and I've already worked jobs for him, like casual jobs, like dance jobs and whatever. And he says, yeah, he says, I'd like to hire you for this. And I said, fine. And then he says, oh, they want everybody to audition. And I said, audition, and it was, so he said, bring some orchestral excerpts over in my house. Well, I didn't have any orchestral excerpts with me. They were all up at school in Rochester. So I drove around I called around to every music store I could find to see if they had any trombone orchestral excerpt books. And I finally found one. And I went all the way out there. It was way out in Bethesda, which is a long drive from where my parents lived. And they had like volume 10 of the Stoneberg book, which is, by the time you get to that one, you're getting into like the high numbered Bruckner symphonies and things like this that nobody knows that. Nobody practices those excerpts. And so I take this thing over to this guy's house and we open it up and he has me play a few things. He doesn't know the music any better than I do. He was a bass. He went to Juilliard, but he didn't know those pieces. So, so he calls up Maurice Perez, who was the conductor of the Bernstein Mass. He's a trumpet player in New York who was in the original New York Brass Quintet, and he was going to be the conductor. So I hear him saying, well, Maurice, Bill's here. He's just played, and I'm not quite sure I can give him an unqualified yes. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. You called me on the phone and hired me for this job already. My father's on the board of the union. Are you going to fire me now because I didn't play some orchestral? So anyway, so he hands the phone to me and Maurice Perez says, well, do you have a good sound? And I actually felt embarrassed to try. I mean, how are you supposed to answer that? I guess so. Yeah. Do you play jazz? Yes. Can you sight read? Yes. That was my audition. He said, well, I think you'll be okay then.
Awesome. Just awesome.
I mean, I haven't auditioned too many times, but that was, I guess you could call that one of them.
So you're a college student playing with Leonard Bernstein.
Yeah.
Opening the Kennedy Center. Okay, that's a pretty good start. And you were at the Eastman School studying with Emory Remington.
Right.
Okay. And how long after that did you decide to come to California?
Well, I graduated from Eastman, and then it was like keeping my eyes out to make sure I wasn't going to get drafted, because that was the draft time. That was the Vietnam War, and I escaped that through the lottery system, and then I went back to live with my parents, and then my brother and I ended up with a house together so I was there for a couple of years. Let's say I graduated in 1971. So I spent about 3.5 years, 4 years in Washington. And during that time, the thought was either to move to New York, because I wanted to do recording work. That was my goal. And I knew it had to be New York or LA. And so I had been to LA a couple of times when my father came out here to work with Charlie Bird, and I liked it. And so then during that time, Chuck Mangione, who had been at Eastman when I not he wasn't a student, he was a teacher there with the jazz ensemble, and I played in the jazz ensembles with him leading, and then he started doing his big orchestral concerts. So I was playing all of those. I was actually playing lead on all of those. I know there's a lot of snickering going on right now, but that was when I was young. And anyway, uh, so he did a couple of albums out here at A&M Records, and I came out to do them. And I met lots of great musicians on those sessions. He had Vince DeRosa, the great French horn player, and Larry Bunker was on that. Kai Winding was the local contractor on those jobs out here. And Dana Hughes was playing bass trombone. I don't know if you knew him.
I did.
And so it seemed like, wow, this is really where I think I would like to be. I like what, and it was so busy out here in those days, you know. So it just seemed like the natural thing to come out here. So in 1975, in July, I think I got out here on the 1st of July in 1975.
Wow. And, and you were just doing record dates, right?
Most at first, yeah. I mean, a couple of casuals, you know, every once in a while. But yeah, I I got into the business of doing record dates pretty much. I met well, I got on Toshiko's band, and then Jerry Hay came in and subbed on Toshiko's band. So we became friends, and he was getting calls to put together horn sections for records with the sea wind horns, but they didn't have a trombone player. So he kind of adopted me into that horn section, and we started doing record dates. Pretty soon, we started working for Quincy Jones. So
so how many dates did you do with Jerry? I mean, do you remember? I mean, is there a number?
I don't think there's a number. It would be hundreds of dates.
I was going to say, man, because wow, I mean, what a good time that must have been.
Oh, it was. I mean, we got to the. I mean, even now when we work together, and there's a couple of different guys playing because Jerry's not playing anymore, so
Mhm.
so Wayne Bergeron plays and stuff. But I mean, it got to be almost like being in a good brass quintet for many years. We got to the point where we sort of knew what everybody was going to do, and and we knew how we were going to start the notes and end the notes, and and the intonation was never an issue with any of those guys. So it just became kind of like sort of like a low level party at all times. We were, I mean, the joking and the laughter was pretty nonstop on all of those things. It was really a great experience to do all that stuff.
I mean, what a great way to go to work, right, man?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, like I knew that he wasn't going to write anything beyond the capacity of a brass player because he was a great brass. Jerry's a great brass player, so he's not going to write something that's not going to be idiomatic. At least, even if it's hard, you're going to be able to figure out how to play it. You know, so there was never any nervous thing. I knew he was going to write hard stuff, but it wasn't anything that was making me stay up at night because I knew because he wrote it. I knew I'd be able to figure out how to play it. I knew that it would work. You know. There's other writers that write stuff that's too hard, but they're not brass players, and they can really make it hard to play.
Yeah, I'm hip, man. Hey, speaking of writing, the next song that we got up, you actually wrote this tune, and I thought it came off really good today, man. And you said your brother wrote the lyrics to it, correct?
Yeah.
Which aren't on this recording, but do you mind kind of setting this tune up, man? Is that cool with you?
Sure. I was writing some music for a show called Frank's Place back years ago, and there was a scene in a there was a scene in like a little dining room somewhere, and one of the characters' names was Ruby, and so I called this Ruby's theme. It was like a pretty tune, just to fit under the picture. It was not a trombone solo that I recall. I think Biff Hannon played the whole thing on piano,
Mm-hmm.
so then I started playing it when I would do jazz gigs every once in a while, and then my brother wrote lyrics to it, and so the tune became Sleight of Heart. But that's yeah.
Well, let's put it up right now, man, and check out Bill Reichenbach's tune "Sleight of Heart." What do you say, Quinn?
So you were extremely busy with record dates. Now, the business changed. The record dates kind of dwindled off. Was that before or after you sort of made your move into film and TV work?
It was after. During the record date period, I started working a little bit on TV film stuff, starting primarily at Universal, and then over at Warner Brothers with Patty,
Uh-huh.
and so that kind of work. It wasn't motion pictures yet. It was mostly TV films, but there was a lot of TV films happening. So,
Yeah, how many orchestras a day were working?
oh man, well, I mean, if you looked at the catalog of current shows that were being done, you could probably work 5 days a week at any of the given studios all day. That's yeah, because
And
of how many different shows they had on TV.
and so you're talking about the big rooms,
Yeah, the big rooms.
and then
Yeah.
the smaller ones too that aren't even there anymore.
Well, yeah. I mean, Disney was a smaller room. They had
Okay.
over there where I think it's where the little theater is now,
Oh, right.
and then Universal had a kind of a not a small room, but it was kind of a clunky room. But we did a lot of stuff there, and then Warner Brothers was always where it is, but
Right.
it wasn't modeled yet.
Uh-huh.
And then
Tadeo.
Tadeo,
Yeah.
yeah, Tadeo eventually. Tadeo was not quite happening at the beginning, but I think they might have called it something else for a while, and then they redid it, and it was the
Uh-huh.
room we worked in,
Okay.
and then and of course Fox and Sony, which was called MGM
Right.
at the time.
Hmm.
And right before I got here, there was a studio over at at Goldwyn,
Oh,
like in the
right.
middle of Hollywood over there near Trader Joe's.
Oh, yes.
And, and I
Right.
heard that studio was unair conditioned,
Oh, yeah.
but I never worked there. It burned down or something. I think maybe one of the musicians burned it down,
Mm,
maybe during the
yeah.
summer, But
And then all these studios on Sunset,
oh yeah,
United and
Sunset Sound,
Sunset Sound,
yeah,
Ocean Way,
yeah.
you know,
Ocean Way was a newer one. That was called something else first.
Cello One or something in those days.
Yeah, I think it went through a couple of different owners.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, there was, and then there was all these little like single space
Right.
studios that would be like one commercial
Hmm.
shop wide, and they would be deep. And there was a lot of them. There was studios everywhere,
Right.
and quite a few of them are not around anymore. Those would be mostly record dates.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah.
On all those TV movies that you did, man, who was like the standout composers for some of that stuff? I mean, who really like, would you show up and go, oh, thank God you're doing this, and I got something to play? I mean, was there any of that going on, or?
I mean, Pete Myers is probably one of the best writers for that kind of stuff, and and he was doing some stuff in TV back then. Let me think of who else. Um, wow, I must not have paid much attention to the.
no,
Uh, I'm blanking on who they were.
no, I was just curious, man, because like you said, there were so many, and you've got a couple of years on me. And when I was a kid, we would always look forward to all these TV movies, and that's what got me into, you know, wanting to play that kind of stuff was, all those guys doing it and everything. And I'm sure, Doug, you were in the same situation as far as that. I mean, the big movies were always the big movies, but it was the television stuff, and the turnaround on that must have been like, get it done, get it done, get it done, moving on, all that kind of thing, right, man?
Oh yeah, it was always that. Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a lot of pressure on it when you guys were doing that kind of stuff, because every other day you're doing something else, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's still like that now. It's just there's not quite as much of it going on, but it was
Uh-huh.
always do it, get it done. We don't want to go overtime, you know. So it was pretty much, and they would write back then. They would write a lot of music for a TV show,
Hmm.
like a like a cop show. Oh, I
Right.
I remember I worked for Billy May a couple of times.
Oh,
My
one
my
of my heroes.
my first my first session at Universal was for Billy May. It was for Emergency,
Ah,
and Dick Nash was on that, and Lloyd Olyate was on that. And it was like, man, going in there. I had already met Dick because he was friends with Phil Teal, and I was hanging out with Phil Teal out at his house. And Dick lived right around the corner, so he introduced me to Dick. But it was, yeah, I mean, those guys, and they were so that they had been doing it for so many years by that time that they were very nonchalant about what was happening. You couldn't phase those guys. They just would sit down and play whatever it was, and they were cool.
yeah. I mean, well, Billy. I got to hang out with Billy towards the end of his life, man, and one of my mentors, and actually one of my heroes as far as musical compositions and arranging are concerned. My wife had Billy sign his rendition of Night and Day and bought the chart for me for Christmas
Wow.
as a Christmas present. But one of the times we had Bruce Broughton on the show a while ago, and he would talk about that whole crime, the cop show things, where
Yeah.
they'd show up for a session and somebody else booked the room, so he couldn't get it done, and they had to figure out how to get it done. And I mean, what a great, I mean, seriously, what a great time to be a musician, right?
Yeah.
When all that stuff was going on, and there weren't any synths, and there were just, come on in and play it, let's get it done. You got work, work, work. And I'm actually very jealous that you got to do that kind of stuff, man, because what a great way to train and get it right, all that kind of stuff, man.
That's true. It was a great way to train. There was synths, but they weren't anything like what we think of now. I mean,
Yeah.
they were probably one note at a time synths, and they might be playing a flute sound or some buzzsaw sound or something like that. And Nelson Riddle also was doing some TV films, and I did a few of those with him. And
So what was it like working with Nelson? Because he's another hero of mine.
I first met Nelson in Washington when he came back there. We did a big party at the Sheraton Park Hotel, which has a ballroom that's like a football stadium. It's so huge you could have 2,000 people in there dancing. And so he hired a big band. My father was playing drums, and I was playing bass trombone. His book with all of that cool stuff that he wrote, for George,
Man, yeah.
and and it was like, I mean, I knew that that music was familiar to me, even though I maybe hadn't heard it all. What was going to happen with that music was sort of like built into my brain, kind of. And so I was kind of playing through this gig, and we had a break, and we're sitting out in the lobby. This is right before I decided to move, right before I was getting ready to move out here, and he says, "Wow," he says, "you really sound great on that bass trombone book." He said, "I'd invite you to come right out to L.A. and come and work in the studios. He said, if it wasn't for my son being a bass trombone player. And I didn't tell him that I was already going to be moving out to LA. But so I ended up working on one of these dates, and he had like 6 trombones among, but Dick Nash and Joe Howard and Lloyd and me and George Roberts and Chris Riddle.
Huh.
And so on one of the 10s, we're standing out in front of the little in the driveway there at Universal outside the studio, and Nelson called him Christopher. He says, "Christopher, have you met Bill Reichenbach? He's the guy that I said was going to come out here and burn you 19 new assholes." I'm thinking, like, how do I react to that?
Awesome. That's so great, man. Well, hey, do you want to put up another tune, Bill?
Yeah, sure.
So the next one we're going to do is All the Things You Are, I think, is right. And today you wanted to play the verse, and nobody plays the verse to this.
Not really, no.
And I was really kind of happy now that I know it. I'm going to be playing the verse from now on.
This is great.
And yeah. So where the hell did you hear the verse? I think we were talking, and you said you heard the verse on a
Streisand album.
Streisand, that's it.
Yeah.
So which album is that, man?
My God, I don't remember. It's an older one. It's certainly.
Were you playing on it?
Not yet. No, I wasn't working with her yet. It was before I started playing on her projects. But yeah.
Well, why don't you tell everybody, how many years did you do with Barbara, with Streisand?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe over. I've worked for her for at least 20 years.
Jeez.
I don't. That just means whatever she's doing that you might be lucky enough to get called.
Yeah, I know, dude. But I mean, the list is just amazing.
Actually,
it really is.
A little longer than that, because we played the thing in Las Vegas when she opened the one of those great big new hotels way out on the Strip, and we were there for I think it was New Year's Eve 2000, or maybe it might have been a couple years before that. And so I had already been working for her by that time, so it's a little longer than 20 years.
Man, what a career, man. So let's check this out. Do you mind, Bill?
Go ahead.
Yeah, come on, Quinn. Let's throw it up.
Well, that was just incredible. What a great rendition
Thanks.
of that. I've been lucky enough to get to sit next to you on many recording sessions over the past 10, 15 years. And I've heard you do this kind of thing. I know that your heart is with jazz, even though you're an incredible symphonic player, incredible rhythm player. Do you get to do enough jazz? I mean, if in a perfect world, would you be?
In a perfect world, I'd be playing it more. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be more. I'd be more in shape to play it. Actually, it's certainly a different kind of chops than you get from playing Family Guy.
Yeah. Did you ever think that you would sort of spend a huge portion of your career sitting in large orchestras playing music for film and TV?
I actually think I did. That was kind of my goal, although I didn't quite understand how time consuming that was going to be and how much time it was going to take away from being able to play jazz. Because when I first came out here, I was playing a lot of jazz, different bands and stuff like that. And I did my own jazz album way back when, and so it was kind of like a consuming interest of mine. And I have to admit that I had a bad attitude about studio guys that didn't keep their jazz chops up.
Interesting.
And now I understand how they didn't have a chance to keep their jazz chops up.
Because I mean, just driving there and doing the gig and driving home, it takes everything you got.
You don't want to come home and woodshed a new tune after you've spent all day, doing something at Fox or something like that.
But in those days, wasn't there more jazz? I mean, were there more opportunities to play
Well,
jazz?
I mean, there was never on the level of like there might be in New York, but there was a couple of jazz clubs and there was different bands. I played with Don Menz's band, his big band, and his sextet, and that was a great experience. When Frank Rossellino passed away, I sort of took his place, which was sort of a humbling experience, but Don was always very supportive and a great experience to play with, and Toshiko's band, and then a lot of my friends had rehearsal bands I played on for a while, and until I got too busy, and so that was all kind of more or less daily,
Have you ever thought of writing a memoir or a book? Or
I have, I've thought of it. Yeah, I guess I better get started if I'm.
Well, or maybe you need your own podcast.
Well,
Yeah, there you go.
it sounds like.
Well, you can come back anytime, Bill, believe.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
How many film scores would you say you played on? How many films?
Let's see. Maybe 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 1,000 or something like that.
Sure. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of working every day.
Yeah.
mean, some films take a week, some take 2 weeks.
At least they used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They used to. Yeah.
Well, and you're not done yet, right, man?
Well, I'm not done yet, although the business might be done with all of us.
Well, I have to say, whenever I talk about Bill, I always say he's the best brass player in the room, And the person I'm talking to usually corrects me and says he's almost always the best musician in the room.
Oh, gee.
Absolutely.
Incredible.
I'm glad you don't say that in front of me.
But no, it's just an absolute joy for me to be able to sit next to you and play. And I tell my friends.
Likewise, I have to say,
every time I get to play with you, I learn something new, and I do mean that. And wow. I mean, I just final embarrassing moment, but we show up at the gig. It's first thing in the morning. He pulls his horn out of the case. It just sounds incredible. I just had to put my horn down. I said, "How do you do that? How do you just pull it out of the case every day, play 6 notes, and you're ready to go?" And he said, "Well, I just kind of, it's the way it is." So
I mean, if you're working every day, you kind of stay warmed up anyway, But yeah. I try to play a few notes at home. I don't like to warm up in public. I don't want to scrape the barnacles off of it in front of everybody.
Yeah, but I think this is true for me, and I know it's true for you too, Doug, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Bill. You pick the horn up, you play a couple notes, and it's been so many years that you go, okay, it's going to be one of those days, and you kind of know what you need to get done just right away. But this morning, Bill, I could tell you played a couple of things and you were feeling good about stuff. So kudos to you, my friend.
I did feel good. I mean, the rhythm section was fun to play with, and that sort of makes the whole situation work for me. Then all I have to worry about is myself.
Yeah, man.
Plenty of worry there, but
Well, hey, we can't thank you enough for being here today. We got one more tune featuring Bill that we'll play on the way out. Doug, do you got anything else for Mr. Reichenbach?
No, just thanks for joining us.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. Thank you.
I'm so glad you took the time today, Bill. I can't thank you enough. And for everybody out there, if you haven't checked this one out, you definitely need to. It's just an absolute pleasure having you on. And I guess we'll be back next week. It's looking like maybe Onyx Brass. That's going to happen, maybe.
I got to ask him. But
well, let's do that. And then the following week, we have all queued up. We have the Dr. Jim Self with his partner John, and they're going to be doing their some cuts off their new record that's coming up. That's just tuba and guitar, and we're really looking forward to that. So thanks to everybody tuning in this week to check out Mr. Reichenbach and Conical Supremacy. Doug, you got any goodbyes?
Thanks. It's been a great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, man, thank you both. And as usual, here's a little bit more music on the way out. Everybody, peace and have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Okay.